This is Southern Belle Humanism, and I'm happy to be here today with Brooke Taylor. She is a real world hero. This is one incredible woman who is doing so many amazing things. She has written a bill, Gracie's bill, to overturn, to stop fraudulent adoptions, and she's going to explain that and tell us her story. She's been the victim of a fraudulent adoption in the state of Alabama, and Brooke Taylor is here to tell her story.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, it's a long story. I'll try to make it somewhat brief. There's been a lot of ins and outs and curves and a lot of different things that have made it difficult. So I'll just start kind of at the beginning. I gave birth to my daughter Gracie when I was 22 years old. And I was a single mother. Her father refused to be involved. And my mother was sick with lupus. And my father was involved. So after about 8 weeks of caring for her, I had postpartum depression. And so I got into some things that I shouldn't have been into. But I was going through a lot of depression and constant worry as to whether or not she was going to stop breathing when she slept. I was hardly getting any sleep at all. Just completely scared that something was going to happen to her. So I made connections with her father when Gracie was 8 weeks old. We had done a paternity test and found out that he was 99.9% chance of being the father. So he requested to see her when she was about 8 weeks old. And so we went to go see him. They were engaging in activity that was not appropriate. But I was so hell-bent on us being a family. I could not comprehend baby, mother, no father. That equation just never entered my mind. And I was determined to create this picture with the three of us. I wanted him and me to be together and for Gracie to be our daughter. And, you know, the cards for that just never lined up. And so I participated in what was going on at the house that day. DHR came to my mother's house where I was staying about 3 days later and knocked on the door and asked me a series of questions. I was completely honest with DHR. My motive in being honest was that I needed some help taking care of her. You know, I was 22. I don't think I was working at the time because I had just given birth. My mother was sick, like I said. So I thought that DHR would help me. And so the initial hearing in family court in Jefferson County was to determine dependency. And what that means is the court will say that the child is dependent and they will decide who to place the child with temporarily. And so I had a distant aunt and uncle that I had called when DHR came knocking on my door. And they were willing to take her temporarily. And so DHR met with me and gave me a laundry list of things to do in order to obtain custody again. And I mean, it included, you know, parenting classes, drug tests, outpatient drug therapy, counseling, maintaining my own apartment, with Gracie having her own bedroom. And so they didn't give me a time frame to do that, but I was able to accomplish all that in 17 months. the parenting class that I went to wrote a letter to the court and said that I was the best example of a young mother that they had ever seen. And I never got a chance to show the judge all of the reference letters that I had from people in the community, but vouching for the work that I was doing to get her back. We never got that far in court. Almost immediately when they obtained custody, there started to be tension between them and me.
Your aunt, your uncle, and yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was some resistance, especially my aunt's part, in giving me the court-ordered visitation.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of times that they showed up to the visitation and allowed me to see her. All of my visitation rights were supervised by another aunt and uncle.
Okay.
But my mother's intuition started telling me that something was wrong.
Yes.
I felt with just some of the comments that my aunt was making that Gracie was moving further and further away from me rather than them supporting me getting her back.
What sort of comments would she make?
She would call Gracie her baby. She would say, if I was holding Gracie, she would say, "Give me my baby." She said at one time in my parking lot of my apartment complex, and I told her, I said, "Look, that's my blood that runs through her veins, not yours. I'm her mother," trying to reason with her.
Mm-hmm.
She went into this, I hate to be brash, but it almost seemed like she was in delusion about whose baby Gracie was. And there was a time that, how little babies, when they start to crawl, will just get away from you real fast. There was a time when I was alone with her in my aunt and uncle's bedroom, and I was laying down with her and soothing her and getting her ready to go to sleep, and turned around to put my glasses on the nightstand and turned back around, and Gracie had crawled to the edge of the bed and started to go over, and I grabbed her ankle before she hit the floor. And of course she started crying, and my aunt walked into the bedroom and demanded that I give Gracie to her so that she could comfort her. I was cuddling her and I was comforting her, trying to play that role as a mother. And I would bring Gracie things like a bouncy seat or even the hand-painted crib that I had for her, the changing table. All of the stuff that I had given them for Gracie had been put into the garage.
That's tacky. So they took a hand-painted crib, and you think they were sleeping with her in a bed? Were they closely? That's dangerous if they were doing that.
No, they had a bedroom for her.
Okay.
But they had bought all new stuff.
Okay.
And so all of the things that I had given them, I had given them a car seat. I had given them a crib and a changing table.
They were trying to erase all signs of you. So that shows instability with this aunt as well. The fact she's trying to erase all signs of a natural mother. And which, as your story goes on, we'll learn that that's sort of what happened. Now, this aunt, was she all there mentally? Did she have some dependency problems?
I didn't know her very well. My uncle is my half uncle. He is a half brother to my biological father. My father died when I was 2. So they were what I would consider distant relatives. There had been some rumors among the family that she had back problems and was taking narcotics.
Oh, okay. So she was on pain meds.
Yeah, and there was definitely signs of her being irrational.
Yeah, okay.
So I never saw her take any medicine, but there were behaviors
that would associate with pain medicine.
Yes.
Pain medicine.
Yes, and she has legitimate health problems. But I think that it clouded her judgment and helped to put her into this state of delusion.
Well, it's odd that, DHR would put a child with a woman like this who has these health issues, and she's older, and that's just an odd choice that this would even be allowed. You think they'd find someone healthier,
There was nobody else.
So that's why they did it. Okay.
There was nobody else. It was them or foster care.
Okay.
And I had asked her not to be put in foster care. I was in foster care from the age of 14 to 18. And so I had been in 3 different foster homes, and none of it was really bad experiences, but there's a lot of children in a foster home. I had seen small babies not really being nurtured the way I think a small baby should be when I was in these foster homes. So my story with family court and with DHR dates back to, 10 years prior to being in court with Gracie. So, there was a lot of resistance from them to follow court orders.
For your aunt and your uncle to follow the court orders.
Yes.
Okay.
And I can't remember exactly how many times. I have all the paperwork. I've saved every single piece of paper that you can imagine. But I can't remember specifically how many times we went to court over visitation, but 90% of the court hearings were me and my attorney claiming that they were not following visitation orders. And one thing that Judge Bayhackle would say is that he wanted us to work things out as a family. I had 5 different attorneys in less than 2 years. So most of them were court-ordered. One of them was hired by me to just trying to find somebody that could convince this judge that there was no working this out as a family.
Yeah, because they wanted your child. They wanted your
I
baby.
started to see it that way.
Yeah.
At first, I was young. One thing about my aunt and uncle is that when I was a small child, I wanted to live with them. My uncle was I didn't know him very well, but he was a go-lucky kind of, funny guy. My aunt was real motherly, and I was being abused at home. And so I wanted to live with them. And so for a long time, what I wanted, Amber, was for them to take me under the wing and reparent me, show me how to be a good mother, give me that stability and support so that I could obtain custody again.
And instead they tricked you, they used trickery, and they backstabbed you. And you had always looked up to these people, and you loved them. And they could have taken care of you. They could have fostered you, but they chose not to, I guess, at the time. But they later on, they were more than willing to take your baby from you.
Yeah.
And I know that probably feels like one of the worst betrayals, that your own family can do that to you. These are very despicable people, and I'm sorry that all this happened.
Well, one thing that I have to say about my aunt and uncle is that they have given her the life that I wouldn't have been able to, just because I'm single. I had not graduated from college at the time. I didn't really have any family support other than my dad and my sister and my aunt and uncle on my mother's side. Dealing with the legality of the case, is what I have fought for the last 14 years. Gracie turned 14 this year.
But just because you're a single mother and you can't give her the newest and the brightest and best all the time doesn't mean that you're not a good parent. And that this is a fallacy that seems to play over and over, where we see in society where people are demonized for being single mothers, where women are demonized for being single and poor, marginalized, disenfranchised. And we see it a lot in regards to classism, where this is, like you said, it's an economic situation. And there's usually a history of poverty, or being in foster care. It's like once they get you in the system, they keep you in the system instead of helping you out, instead of elevating everybody up, bringing everybody up. It's almost as though, whether you're talking about DHR, the court system, the cynic in me almost sees it as though they want to bring everyone down to the lowest common denominator, because it is about money, it's about control. And I'm glad that you've broken this cycle and you're helping people.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Right now you're helping overturn everything that was done to you. So tell us about the legalities, like what they did when they disappeared with her, and every legal thing up until the disappearance and how that happened.
The court date that we went to in January of 2004, I told the judge, I screamed at the judge, I have to be honest. I told him that they were going to disappear with Gracie. I had no evidence, nobody had told me that. It was strictly just mother's intuition. So I told him in court, I said, they are going to run with my baby. Well, it was a few weeks later, maybe. I was laying down to go to bed one night, and I just felt this terrible feeling on the inside. And again, mother's intuition. And I knew something was wrong with Gracie. I knew that something wasn't right. And it was about 11 o'clock at night, so it was too late to call them. By this point, they really weren't even answering my calls. I had, shown anger towards them like any mother would, that was losing grip with their daughter, with their child. So I had left some nasty messages with them, and, whether that was why they were answering me, or they were just trying to create more distance. So that night I drove to their house. And when I got there, the door was open and all of their furniture was gone. They had disappeared with her.
In the middle of the night?
That day they had moved out.
Okay.
And so my aunt's son was there, and I got very angry and scared. It was more fear than it was anger, but I'm sure it came across as anger because I was not happy, at all. Especially since my intuition had already told me that this was a possibility, that this was going to happen. Intuition, God, whatever it was, I saw this happening. And he just kept saying, it's my mom. It's my mom. I'm sorry. I have nothing to do with this. It's my mother. And so there's where the story starts, really.
Okay.
Went to the Hoover police. The detective I talked to said, because there's a court order for temporary custody, it's not considered kidnapping by the law. Went to the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department, filed a report there. Again, it wasn't against the law because they had temporary custody. Went to family court. Family court said there's nothing we can do about it. We can't serve a bench warrant. The judge can't hold them in contempt of court because they have an unknown address. Nobody knew where they were, or if they did know where they were, nobody was telling me.
Yeah. Okay.
And so there was about a 6-month or so period of time that went by that I was, to describe it as horrified is not, it doesn't even scratch the surface. I cannot describe, Amber, the fear, the pain, the betrayal, the lack of trust for anybody around me. I guess what the hardest thing was about all of this, besides not knowing if she was safe, and because your mind tells you all sorts of stuff in situations like this.
Yes.
I mean, I never doubted that my aunt and uncle loved her, but when you don't have the answers, your mind starts filling in the blanks, so there were all of these fears. I'm sure a lot of them were irrational. But again, I had no direction as to what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was answering any questions.
Mm-hmm.
And, called the FBI, heard of a little girl that had been found, and called the FBI and told them that my daughter was missing. And of course, their ears perked up because they're like, what do you mean your daughter's missing? And, I tell them the whole story. Again, they call me back and say, that's not in our jurisdiction. If they cross state lines, call us back. So every avenue that I went down was just one shut door after the other.
You told me you even had jars out at gas stations with her name on it.
Yeah.
You had flyers everywhere.
Yeah. I had made jars with our picture on it and put it in gas stations to raise money for the case. Raised $700 in about 2 weeks. But that didn't even scratch the surface of what it was going to. That covered the cost of the paperwork.
Yeah.
That didn't even scratch the surface of the kind of money that I was going to need to fight this fight. And the hardest thing, and I'm sure that mothers that have been through this understand that as Gracie started to get older and the months went by and the years went by, I became very just horrified that I was going to be in Walmart and see her and not know it was her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I didn't know what she looked like. She was growing up, So I would be in Walmart, I would be at the mall, and I would look for her everywhere. And every blonde-headed little girl I saw, and this, maybe to a layman, this sounds crazy, but, when it comes to the detachment, which that bond being, messed with, it will drive you absolutely insane. Mm-hmm. And I would look for her and I would see blonde-headed little girls and I would pay attention to them. And, my fear was that Gracie would be with somebody I didn't know, like a babysitter or a friend of the family or something that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I would pass her in an aisle and not know it was her. And so the psychological, damage that was done.
A lot of post-traumatic stress.
A lot. I've been diagnosed with that since this incident. Yes. And I've been in therapy for about 8 years to overcome what happened. 2006, I hired a private investigator. And they came back with an address for them. And so they disappeared in 2004. In 2006, they came back with an address and sent them a letter. And of course, at this point in the game, I didn't know anything about the law. Mm-hmm. I was just a sales lady, non-school graduate, no education really other than high school. So I sent them a letter, a handwritten letter to the address that the private investigator had gotten for me, and asked them to let me see Gracie. Told them that I would keep all of this out of court. I just wanted to see my baby. Mm-hmm. And I received a letter from Drew Whitmire, which is an adoption attorney in Alabama. He's in Birmingham.
Drew Whitmire.
Okay. And the letter stated that Gracie had been adopted and that no further visitation would occur. And I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it. I didn't know much about adoptions or anything, but I knew that you couldn't just up and adopt a child, or I thought you couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they don't know this. So you're going to have to explain the law that this can happen to anyone.
Yeah. So years later, after doing research, talking to, I probably talked to 40 attorneys over the last 10 years. And what I ran into with attorneys is that a lot of them didn't want to go up against Drew Whitmire.
Yeah, Whitmire is a big one here in Birmingham.
Yeah. So, you know, that one of the first questions that the attorneys would ask me is, who's the opposing attorney? And I would tell them who it was. And they were like, well, you know, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to help you, you know, things like that. And so, again, I did not believe that she had been adopted. I did call probate court, and I told probate court, I've received a letter from an attorney. My daughter's supposedly been adopted. I did not give my permission. I didn't know the word consent at the time, which is the legal term for, you know, permission. So probate court, another closed door, probate court said, well, those records are sealed if she has been adopted. So
yeah, adoption records are sealed in pretty much every state, sealed hardcore, at least in 40 states.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not sure about any other state, but here they're sealed. And the law was at the time, I believe, that the record couldn't even be opened by the adoptee. That has since changed. Now you can unseal your records if you're the adoptee at the age of 19. I don't know how easy it is to accomplish that. But so one thing that the second private investigator that I hired told me in 2008 was that, well, back to probate court. Probate court said those records are sealed. I can't give you that information. And I started crying and I said, you know, ma'am, you don't understand. You know, my daughter has been legally kidnapped and I need to know if this is true. And, you know, she said, well, you're going to have to file for, you know, the adoption records. Again, more attorneys. You know, every time there was a development in the case, I called 40 attorneys, you know, and, you know, 1 out of 10 would tell me what I needed to do. And that kind of gave me my next step. You know, it's amazing what a mother's love can make you do. Because, I mean, I quit dance, I quit basketball, but this is one thing that I just cannot quit. You know, that drive to be in her life and to see justice served has been like this magnetic pull ever since this happened. So in 2008, I hired another private investigator because I sent him another letter, and the letter had been returned and it said that there was nobody at that address by that name. So they had moved again. According to the private investigator report, this was moved 6 since 2004.
Wow, 6 times.
Yes.
They went through a lot to do a very bad deed.
Yeah, and I don't know for sure that they were running from me necessarily. I mean, that's one part of the story that I want to ask them, you know, why all the moves, why the length that you've gone through.
That's so unhealthy for a child to move them that much too. I mean, she's been going through school at this point.
Yeah.
Different school systems and such. That's a lot of stress on the child.
Well, most of their moves was before the age of like 8.
Okay.
So
but she still would have been starting in school.
Yeah.
It would have been kindergarten. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
So private investigator got me more phone numbers and addresses. This time I took it to an attorney in Huntsville and we met for coffee. I took him the paperwork that I had, which was a stack of family court records that thick. And he said, I'd have to have $60,000 as a retainer fee.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, oh, okay. You know, sure. Check or cash, you know. That was the final straw for me. I had my own marketing company at the time, just a small marketing company there in Huntsville, and was succeeding and doing well, had Fortune 500 companies as clients, and decided just to shut my business down and go into like full-blown attorney mode. And I had decided to represent myself in overturning the adoption. Mm-hmm. And knew nothing about the law, but I knew the case better than anybody. Mm-hmm. And this case had so many twists and turns that no attorney could really get the whole picture. Mm-hmm. You know, there had been so much done that was not necessarily illegal, but unethical. Mm-hmm. You know, that it was just, yes, it was hard for an attorney to get that big picture. Now, the adoption was done legally on the court's side, but on my aunt and uncle's side, it was done illegally.
Yeah, because they took your daughter and ran. And the reason they got to adopt her was because she'd been in their custody, and they claimed that you disappeared when actually they were running.
Yeah.
So just to make everyone clear, because I know people are going to be confused, well, how they get to adopt her, they basically lied to the courts and told them that they didn't know where you were.
Exactly.
Where your location was, and that you had just, I guess they made it sound like you had abandoned.
Yes.
And instead they were actually running.
Right. Right. So what they did essentially, once I got the adoption records, I filed for the adoption records because I was pro se, which means I was representing myself. And filed for the adoption records. Once I got the adoption records, I saw that what they had done but what they had done was that they had gone to probate court and said, hey, we've had custody of this child for longer than 6 months. That's the law. There's been no communication with the natural parent, the biological parent, either or, which wasn't true. Her dad and me and the paternal grandmother had always been a part of her life up until the time they ran. So their claim in probate court was that I had abandoned her. Abandonment by the law is no contact for 6 months, no financial support for 6 months, which I did not do, which was true, but that was because I didn't know where she was.
Yeah, you had nowhere to send the check to.
Right. They had moved her from out of the daycare that she had been going to, which I was making payments at the daycare prior to them disappearing. And so they signed an affidavit, and this is the legality of it, is that they signed an affidavit stating that the whereabouts of the natural mother and father are unknown, and that we have taken steps by contacting family and certified mail to reach the natural parents, and they have not come forward to contest the adoption.
So basically, they lied when they claimed all.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
They lied to judges and courts and all that jazz. And
absolutely. Which, from what I understand, Amber, there's no perjury laws in probate court.
Wow.
One thing that I did when I was representing myself is wanting to file charges on them for perjury. Mm-hmm. And can't remember exactly what the response was I got from the Jefferson County Police, but definitely, I definitely wasn't able to pursue that avenue for some reason. Mm-hmm. So because my strategy was to hit them in probate court, family court, and with the police. Mm-hmm. Hit them on all 3 sides, and found resistance at the Jefferson County Police. So I filed a motion to overturn the adoption based on fraud. Mm-hmm. And so my argument was that they had frauded the court and they had frauded me. in order to obtain the adoption decree. And I also filed a motion to prove fraud and gave the evidence of the affidavits and all that they had done and the number of times they had been to my apartment, the close relationship between my maternal aunt and uncle with my paternal aunt and uncle. So they could have contacted someone to let me know that they were petitioning to adopt her. They did not do that because they didn't want me to, consent, not give my consent. And so we went to court. It was a one-day trial. My aunt and uncle were there that have Gracie. Judge Sherry Friday was there, which I think the world of her. Sherry Friday. Yeah, at Probate Court in Jefferson County. She really took time with this case. Her assistant, Jane, was in the courtroom. Drew Whitmire was in the courtroom. And my Uncle Fred and Aunt Sherry were in the courtroom as well. And my dad was there, but I think he stayed outside the courtroom because he wasn't a party to the case. And so I presented all the evidence. The main thing that I presented when we were in court was the affidavit that Drew Whitmire and my aunt and uncle had all three signed. Drew Whitmire signed an affidavit that he had served me by mail, but could not produce evidence of the certified receipt of where he had certified me by mail and I had received it because there was no certified mail. So basically my aunt and uncle admitted in court that that was their signature on the affidavit, that they had been to my apartment several times, that they knew where I lived, that they had Fred and Sherry also testified that they had not been informed of the adoption. And so the guardian ad litem, Letha Gilbert, told me that I did a great job. Again, that's a mother's love, regardless of the distance between a mother and her child, that love doesn't go away.
Yeah.
That love and that bond is sustained.
Yeah.
And I hate it, Amber, when people call me the birth mother, the biological mother.
Yeah, you never gave consent.
I am the mother.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Not only because I gave birth, not only because I didn't consent, not only because I fought for her, but God gave me Gracie, and I believe that, and my aunt and uncle took her away. And so the judge had a hard time with having to tell me the verdict. We were in trial for about 6 hours that day, and they brought in two guards, two sheriffs for the verdict. And they kept me on one side of the room and them on the other side of the room. I guess they thought that one of us was going to go psycho if, the verdict didn't turn out the way we wanted it to. But she explained in her ruling that the law states that an adoption can't be overturned or attacked after a year of the adoption decree being finalized, even in cases of fraud. Okay. Her words to my aunt and uncle were basically, "You're going to burn in hell." Something to that effect. Her words to me were, "I'm sorry, I cannot give you your daughter back." And of course I was crying. Fred and Sherry were crying. And I knew, Amber, that I had done my absolute best job. Drew Whitmire didn't even speak in court hardly. he had no defense.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe he knew the law and knew I didn't stand a chance.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe, the evidence just spoke for itself. I don't know, but he didn't argue with me.
Yeah, because you filed 2 motions. You filed one for fraudulent adoption, and then you filed one to have the adoption overturned. And she granted, she said this is fraudulent, but she couldn't overturn it.
Right.
So you got the motion for fraudulent. Yeah, this is fraudulent. The judge ruled on that. Yeah, it was. She agreed with you. But yet, because the way the law was written, even though she's a great judge, just because the state law, she couldn't do anything about it. She couldn't overturn it by herself without what you're doing now, presenting this bill and getting it passed.
Yeah, so that's kind of where we come to today, is that we were leaving the courtroom and I asked my aunt and uncle if they would send me pictures at least, keep me informed of her, how she's doing in school, is she in church, does she have a boyfriend, just things that mothers want to know. And they told me that they would. Of course, I've never heard from them since. That was in 2009. We were leaving the courtroom, and Fred, my Uncle Fred, put his arm around me and he said, "I'm sorry you lost." He said, if it wasn't for the law, you would have won today. And I just looked at him and I said, well, then I'll change the law. I just couldn't give up.
Mm-hmm.
I just could not give up. Some have said that it was an obsession, but my mother didn't fight for me. When she lost custody of me in family court when I was 14, she threw her hands up and said, "You can have her," talking about me. And I just was determined to not ever do that to my children. And so I wrote Gracie's bill. This is the original bill. It's kind of long. The original bill covers basically the entire process, from serving parties, proving live witness that you've tried to, contact friends and family, getting friends and family to testify to the fact that you've tried to contact the parents through them. So the original bill took me a little while to write. I had to do a lot of research, and was proud of the first bill. I found a Representative Laura Hall of Madison County. She's wonderful. She has, as much as me, she has not given up on this case, on this story, on this bill. So we have been going back and forth with Legislative Reference Services at the State House. They do the research on a bill, and then they send you the draft. You approve or disapprove, make changes. So the bill has evolved over time. And so where it is today is Gracie's bill says that that an adoption can be overturned or attacked up until the time a child is 18, when the petitioner committed fraud on the court or on the natural parent to obtain the adoption decree. So it lifts that 1 year bracket that is stopping parents from winning their cases today. I'm not the only one that's been through this.
That's very true.
So Gracie's bill would open up the avenue for cases like mine, where I didn't find out for years that she had been adopted, didn't have the money for an attorney, didn't know the law, didn't know how to go about overturning an adoption. I just studied day and night to learn how to present evidence and file motions and all of that stuff. And it has been a wild ride. I've accomplished a lot. I'm proud of the job I've done as a mother. Don't feel like I've gotten very far. But this podcast is sort of redemption. Someone out there, wants to hear my story, and there's been some new developments. I found Gracie on Facebook in 2013 and contacted her and told her that I was her mother. And I understand that she has another mother and I'm willing to share her and all that stuff, but she did not even know about me. When Gracie was 3.5 years old, in the adoption records, they changed her first, middle, and last name. And so she didn't even know her birth name. She didn't even know that she was adopted.
Wow.
They had kept that secret from her all of her life. And so I told her on Facebook, which some people disagree with, but when you're in a situation like mine, it's easy to judge. That was my one shot to get a hold of her. I took it.
I think you did the right thing.
Yeah.
I do, because if she found this out after she turns 19, the longer it goes on as a lie, the more trauma it's going to cause. Because people always know, and I've shared this before. I grew up Catholic, and I saw people who were the products of forced adoptions, and the kids that were lied to, the adoptees that were lied to, ended up so traumatized. More, even in all adoptees have trauma, because people have tried to break that natural inherent mother-child bond. That's science, nature, God. They've tried to break that, and that causes trauma. Of course, you can't break it, as we've discussed. But I think you did the right thing.
Well, and it wasn't an impulsive decision.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, I had 13 years to think about it. 13 years to pray about it, 13 years to think about it, 13 years to talk about it. It was not an impulsive decision. It was a very calculated decision. I have not doubted that decision for a minute since I took it.
Good for you.
But it's just been I sort of feel like I've been in a tornado, and I just came out of the ground and the tornado has quit spinning.
Yeah.
And I look back over the last 14 years, and it seems like some movie that I watched. It's been so unbelievable, the journey that I've had to take to get here. So at first, when I told her that she was adopted, she confronted them, and they told her that I was her aunt. They still did not confess.
Wow.
That I was her mother. And so of course that confused her, I'm sure. I mean, obviously. The next thing that happened is they told her that I was her mother, but I tried to kill her. I tried to cut her, pushed her off the bed. It's that incident again.
They lied.
They lied.
Yeah.
My aunt sent me a text telling me what a piece of what I was, for telling a child over Facebook that they were adopted, and I'm selfish and I'm self-centered, and
she's telling you this, and she ran off with your child. The woman who kidnapped your child and lied about being a biological mother. How old is she, by the way? Is she a boomer?
She's 62 or 63.
Oh, wow. So she basically wants your daughter to believe she gave birth to her when she was in her 50s or something? I mean, that's insane. That is delusional.
Yeah.
This woman is delusional. The fact that she would lie to a child, I mean, that eventually Gracie would figure it out. Well, women can't have babies after a certain age.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just ridiculous that you would even tell a child that. She would have known. She probably already knew anyway. I mean, if
she told me that she had inclinations already. I mean, she's around that age. She's starting to learn about the birds and the bees,
exactly,
and how all that works.
There's no way they could keep that secret. I don't know. That was probably what just to lie completely and say, pretend you're biological mothers. Almost like you got to wonder how much this woman really believed that lie, her own lie. Like, and that is crazy. That is a form of dementia if she did believe her own lie.
Yeah,
I mean, she's the right age to get it too.
It's been something that I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, Amber, because I've sort of paid attention to, other situations, and I've seen this before. I've seen it in a lot of people's lives where, there are people that just get attached to other people's children. And I don't know if it's that age bracket. I don't know if it's anybody's that age, but I don't know what it is. I don't get it.
I don't either. I just think sometimes it's funny because it's always the finger pointing at you, the person pointing the finger. Interesting that she called you selfish when that was her projecting that entitlement, that selfish, complete and total insane selfishness that she would take another woman's baby. And isn't there a story about that in the Bible too? I mean, and
that story, it's interesting you brought that up because what happens in that story is that there are two women in the village and they're arguing over who the baby belongs to.
Mm-hmm.
And so they kept arguing and all the townspeople were like, they're arguing. I'm sure that's the way people in Birmingham are with me and her, just, okay, y'all decide and get this over with. But the story in the Bible is that they would argue over who the baby belonged to. And so they took it in front of the court. And the judge said, okay, I've got a solution. He said, I'm paraphrasing all this, but he said that, I tell you what, we will split the child in half and you each can have a piece.
Yeah.
And so one of the women stood up and said, no, don't do that. You can have him. Telling the other lady, you can have him. And the judge, it gives me chills, but the judge says, okay, you're the mother.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
That mother had gotten to the point where she knew that what was in the child's best interest was greater than what was in her own interest.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten to that place. Where I can appreciate what they've done for her. It's taken a lot of therapy, a lot of prayer. It's a lot of tears, a lot of anger, especially frustration. I mean, this situation has been so frustrating, but I have peace with it today.
Mm-hmm.
I know that God will restore. He has restored. In September, Gracie called me, and we've talked on the phone for about 3 hours that day. And just, do you like pizza? Yeah, I do. What's your favorite color? Trying to establish what we have in common. She looks just like me.
She does.
So
she looks just like her. I've seen pictures.
We have the same face.
Yeah, they have the same features.
Face recognition on Facebook gets us confused.
Yeah, features it will. That's funny.
So, we've talked quite a bit since September. I was able, and this is really exciting, they did allow me to send her Christmas presents. So I went all out, got her a Columbia jacket and, willow tree figurine that my friend had given me to give to her. It was real special. So, that was amazing to be able to communicate to her through gifts. That's kind of the way I show people how I love them, is I give them gifts. Mm-hmm. And so to be able to, I almost bought you a card today, actually. I couldn't find a thank you card. But, being reunited with her, and I still haven't seen her. It's still like walking on eggshells, My aunt and uncle are still not answering my calls. They're still not answering my letters, but they are opening the door to allow us to communicate, me and Gracie. And, they've got some stuff going on in their lives right now that I don't know very much about, but right now I'm just chilling. If that's an appropriate word to use.
Yeah.
Just chilling.
Just chilling.
Just kind of letting everything blow over. Gracie is doing well. She's beautiful. She's smart. She makes good grades. She's in church. She's a Christian, which is what I've prayed for all of these years. And they've done a good job with her. They have. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to be a part of that.
And you wanted to, so you just wanted that ever since you were young. You just wanted a big family,
right?
And them to be a part of your life and everything.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know what the future holds, and I don't know, if any repercussions are going to come from doing this podcast, or pushing the bill or advertising the bill. How that's going to affect. But this is where I have to just trust, that God gave me the bill. He gave me Miss Hall. He gave me you. He has, set me on a path to help other parents. And I don't do the podcast and other, advocacy that I've done to hurt my aunt and uncle. I do it because this situation has caused me pain. It's caused my daughter pain, most importantly. It's caused them pain. A lot of people have been hurt by this situation. And if Gracie's bill will change that for, people in the future, then I guess it was worth it.
Oh, I think so. This is why, I think you're such a hero to be doing this, because you're just not thinking of the pain that everyone has suffered. And you're right. They cause their own pain. They really hurt themselves. What's going on and everything. And like I said, we don't mention names on the podcast, so we're not going to say their names or anything like that. That wouldn't be professional. But they've caused each other pain. They've caused you pain. They've caused your daughter pain. And the fact that you are by far the bigger person to sit here and not completely condemn them and to talk about your love, that this makes you a beautiful soul.
Thank you. I appreciate that. If you would have talked to me about this 5 years ago, I wouldn't have had the same attitude. This love for them and forgiveness for them has, it's been a lot. It's taken a lot to get to the point where I could love them again. I don't know if I'll ever like them.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to love them because it's what's best for my daughter. So like I said, I'm just waiting to see if the future holds. The bill will be introduced at session in just a few weeks, and those dates can change.
Yeah, they do change.
They do change. So, if you're waiting for the bill to be dropped, don't hold your breath. It is coming. I talked to Miss Hall on Friday. She did give me a date. And I trust that she is diligently working to get this bill introduced.
She sounds like a lovely person.
She is.
She sounds like just someone who really stands up for women.
Yeah, she does. She does.
That's very
She's
cool.
a retired teacher.
Wow, I'm a teacher. That's my day job.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, she's very. I'm glad you have her.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
So and John Hardy in Montgomery has been a wonderful support system. John Martin Eads, an attorney here in Birmingham, has been a great support system. Scott Gilliland has been as well. Anna Hart, an attorney, is a good friend of mine. She has been a support. There's been a lot of people along the way that have helped me to get where I am today. My uncle, friend, my Aunt Sherry, have loved me through the hardest times. They never gave up on me. They never gave up on my daughter. All of my cousins, their children, and my mom's, side of the family. And my sister, she gets mad for me.
As a sister, I can understand. Yeah, I have a sister too.
So that's nice.
Yeah.
To have somebody real defensive, for you. So, and my dad has always just given me the wisdom that I needed to make the right decisions for myself and Gracie.
Mm-hmm.
He has told me, whoa, when I needed to slow down. He's told me go when it was time to speed up. So I've been blessed. And today I graduated from UAB in August with a degree in sociology and a minor in legal affairs. Go figure. And so I work for a company now working with children who have been institutionalized. They have mental health problems and they're in DHR's custody. So I'm getting to give back and be a part of the system in a more positive way. Mm-hmm. 3 years ago, I volunteered at family court with the probation department. That was amazing. Was able to go to Brazil in September and tell my story. And so good things are happening. The hard work is paying off. God is being good to me and my family. Gracie's good. My aunt and uncle, they are taking care of things and, just excited to see what the future holds. So, but I really appreciate you allowing me to come on this podcast and doing what you're doing for parents like me.
Well,
And,
you're welcome. And I love doing it because, like I said, I stood witness to fraudulent adoptions, and I want to see people protected like you do. And I think that, your testament here is just shows how far a mother's love can go. And I know that we're in the same generation, and you're the best mother that I know.
oh, wow.
You have fought for your daughter, and you learned the law. You wrote a bill that's going to be passed for your daughter.
Yeah.
And you are 10 times the mother that I of other people that I see. So yeah, you're by far the best mom I know.
Thank you.
So,
I appreciate that.
I don't know many people that could have done this, could have done everything that you've done, where you came from. You came from the system. Mm-hmm. And then everything you've done has been to save your daughter and to save other people. Now you're saving other children. You're saving other families. You're saving other women. Mm-hmm. You're out there saving your sisters, and that is so impressive.
Thank you.
You truly are a real world hero. and so thank you from society.
I appreciate it.
From all of us. Bye guys. Until next time.